be all set. Have one each. So, who's got their hand up first? There we are. Here's a microphone. How can you say it?
How can you get the film?
To get the film, on January 29th, we are releasing the film video on demand and also DVDs, so they will be accessible to anyone, anywhere. The best way to, if you go to rocksinmypocketsmovie.com, our website, you can get all the information there, how to get it, and we're also looking for what's called affiliates. Anyone with a website can sell this film off of their website and get 10% of the proceeds. So if you're interested in becoming an affiliate, you can talk to us afterwards. Okay?
So over here, question.
So the thought that occurs to me is, are you one of the first people to really think about, like you have cousins, and I imagine you have cousins and you have family members, and certainly it would occur to me that if there was a lot of this, I mean, I've thought of that about in my family, you know, where I've had other things happen beside suicide, but I've certainly thought, you know what I mean, where does this come from, and you know, how much of this is genetic and how much is environmental. But are you the first person in your family? In the film, there's sisters and there's cousins and there's all of these people, but most of them don't seem to be as fascinated or as tied to the idea that we have this, and sometimes it really wrecks people's lives when they don't get good help or love or support or meds or whatever it is. So that's what I was wondering. I'm sorry it took so long. Are there other people in your family who have explored and are interested in this issue?
Well, the family kept most of these events kind of secret or half secret, and the younger generation, for example, never knew most of these events, and I was just one of the people who had these things happen to. And so, and they were like half said things or half truths, and there were all these dots. And I was interested, probably was the first one, the only one who was interested to connect them. Or I wouldn't say interested as much, because everybody is interested, but who had the courage to connect the dots and call out the name, you know, to call out that, you know how you say in a fairy tales, and you call the name of a dragon, he loses the power. And so I was interested to call out the name of the dragon, and then at the peril that my family would ostracize me. And I, like, you know, we premiered the film in Riga, in Latvia, and 600 people came to the premiere, and 60 of them were my relatives. And it was very frightening and nerve-wracking, and you know, they had a complicated response. The young generation said, we never knew any of this. Like, it was like black holes in a family, and then finally we understand the family history better. But also they said that now we understand ourselves better, because we thought we were these freaks. We had all these feelings and these feelings are horrible. And now we understand ourselves better. But the older generation, you know, came to me and they're like, how dared you? How dared you to reveal family secrets? Now nobody will marry young generation because everybody knows the family is crazy. And I was like, oh God, I mean, you know, I want everybody to be happy and marry and live happily ever after. But, you know, but then I was like, okay, well, I guess I was really mean and bad to my family. But then the 600 other Latvians came to me and said, that was exactly my family. That is exactly what happened in my family. Just like little details are different, but that's what happened. And I was like, wait, why my family thinks they have copyrights to to suicide, you know.
What's
or-
so great is that your honesty and your having been willing to, connect the dots, especially with your family, as many of our families have said, don't let anybody know that. They don't have to know that business, you know what I mean? Forget that. Tell them all the good stuff. You don't need to tell them that. So your honesty, your artistry, and the way you shared the story gives every one of us who have some of these issues the desire to explore, gives me the desire to explore, and I mean, it's a gift. It's a great gift.
Thank
And I
you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Stigma, in fact, is the fear that one might be there.
Yeah.
So let's have another question. Yes, over here. Dark hair.
I'm just curious that your great-grandmother, I guess the first person to show the mental illness, seemed to have come more from pressure, more from environment, more from the family, I mean, the way women were expected to be. Maybe if it had been a different time, maybe she wouldn't have had that mental illness. Do you think? I mean, I don't know. But it just seems like she succumbed to all the pressures around her and all the children and the man that locked her up, or your great-grandfather, whatever he was. Does that make, do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I'm sure if in different times and if in a different culture, she would have more options. But just the way how things worked out, she was trapped into this one situation, and then her options got really, really limited. And I feel it myself, like I want to have a choice in my life. And when I don't have a choice, I get really depressed. And even when I don't have a choice, I try imagine that I have a choice because it helps me to get through to some difficult times. But in her case, in Anna's case, I find it very ironic and strange and interesting and fascinating that she wanted to live, she wanted to survive. She really pushed the family through the most difficult times, like the war and these partisans and killing the rabbits. And then once the kids were to the age, the youngest one was like 14, once they were like safely brought up, something like she unraveled. And that thing that once she didn't have to perform this task of making her family live, something inside her unraveled, and that is so interesting to me. And that kind of tells me that I need to be busy, and whatever it is.
But it might not have been genetic from the beginning, do you think? Doctor, I don't know, because it sounds like it was more of an environmental pressure that created this emotional disturbance in her. I don't know, because...
Well, it's not an either-or situation, really. But it's a combination of the two things together. So there's a vulnerability that then is played upon by circumstance. And you're quite right. Most of us can get depressed given the right circumstance, but there are some who have a vulnerability that drives them faster to that particular corner. And I think it's very interesting that you say that when you keep busy, you can somehow, I mean, as you engage the audience here, as you run up and down, and you have amazing energy. And I think that perhaps is one of the ways in which you cope with the other side of the coin. Is that right? Yeah. Perhaps talk a little bit about that, because I'm fascinated by the way in which your great ability as an artist. You've had, Signe has had lots and lots of different things rather than just making films. She's an artist, and she has, over now, many years since she was a teenager, been able to create what's inside her head on a piece of paper or in these films and so on and so forth. So it's the artistic drive which somehow helps her hold all this together. But I'd love to hear you talk about that, or even, Sturgis, you must have seen it from the outside. Discuss that among yourselves just briefly. That would be fascinating.
Well, Sturgis, so why did you get involved in the project? There's a mic.
There's one under there. Because I think this is, it is the essence of what we do, is the persons around us that make it possible for us to have enjoyment doing it, yes?
Yeah, yeah. No, I got involved because I wouldn't see her otherwise. To make a film is around-the-clock work, and I wanted to see her once in a while. I'm a theater person, so I'm not really in the film world, but I was able to bring some of my theater knowledge to this film. I directed her voiceover,
Do you want to talk a little bit about voiceover?
We'll
Because
talk a
I'm
little-
not an actress.
Yeah, okay. So we actually, for the voiceover, we rehearsed every day for 7 weeks, 4 to 5 hours a day, and because she's not a trained actor, and even though she knew exactly what she had written, to express it in body and soul in a way that people would really want to listen to it for 90 minutes is a whole different challenge. So, but the interesting thing is that in working every day for 7 weeks and reading it aloud, we were honing the text at the same time, because you keep hearing it and suddenly this sentence isn't, may not be necessary, or, ooh, we should really develop this here because I'm not quite understanding it. But I actually, in the process, learned a lot about what deep depression is. I describe myself as a normally non-depressed person. And so the deep depression I never really got. And a lot of people don't, who don't go through it. It's so easy to tell someone to snap out of it, or to just, or just get to work and you'll feel better. So that deep depression, especially the last 20 minutes of the film, which was not originally in the movie, and I asked her to make it more personal. And then she came back with this text, and it was like, oh my God. And actually, it took her a long time to get through that last 20-minute text without breaking up, and it wasn't until we were actually in the recording studio that she got through it cleanly, which, says something about what she wrote.
But to answer your question, the thing is about being an artist is that nobody really wants you to do things. Like, this film came into being because I wanted to make it, not because somebody came to me and begged me to make it. And once it came to being, we discovered that there is a need for the film. There wasn't need before. And so, so when I would get up in the morning, or I would wake up in the morning and I feel depression is hitting me again and I can't move, and I have a cloud over my head and I'm barely comprehending, and I'm in a pain, and I have work to do, and I have to accomplish something every day. It's, I have to create at least 5 drawings or 80 drawings every day, because otherwise the project will not move. So wouldn't move forward. So I drag myself out of the bed and I make this, morning ritual that I have, and then at 9:30 I sit down at the table in front of paper, which the drawings are created on paper with pencil, and I force myself to work. And everything that I do during depression, the episode of depression, seems like shit, like crap, and I want to crumple every single paper because I'm frustrated and I'm unhappy, and I want to, I want to die, and this is crap. But I know that I have to keep moving, and I say, I forgive you, I forgive these drawings, and I deal with it later. If they're crap, I throw them out later. But now I have to move, and then when, of course, then the episode passes, when I look at these drawings, they're not so bad, they're actually usable. But when I'm on a manic episode, for example, I can easily produce 70 drawings, 80 drawings, just like flying, and I'm thinking, I'm a genius, I'm top of the world. And then when I come down, I look at them and I'm like, eh. So that's the irony. But every time when I'm down below, when I'm beaten down by depression, I always try to remember the highs, you know, like, I don't know if, like, I don't know if it happens to you when you are, when you're watching someone eat, or when you think of food, you get hungry. And when you see someone having sex, or you know, or think about sex, you get horny. And the same is about depression. When you start thinking about too much about being depressed, or the mind of it, you get depressed. But when you think about being high, you know, you kind of have that memory of being high. And so this is how I try to say, okay, let's just cope with, like, just imagining that I'm high. You know? I always, Sturgis, what is it? What I always threaten to do? I always threaten to take the what is the drink? The Red Bull drink. I never had the Red Bull drink, right? But every time when I get, like, knocked down by depression, and I have no energy, I'm fatigued, and I barely can sit, I can't even stand, and then I'm threatening to buy this Red Bull and just drink the whole bottle, and just talking about it or thinking about it makes me more energized.
Well, there are lots of things that I could say about that, but let's have another question. I mean, there's some fascinating things. Just one vignette to help you. You know, if you think about what is depression, or what is mania, it's a disjunction between the part of the brain which is essentially the rider, the cognitive part, and then the emotional part. It's like a horse and rider, and it's as if the horse is riding in mania, but the rider has lost the reins. And so if you think about these in a balanced sense, what I think you're describing is that you've learned over the years that you can drive that even when the horse is running in a direction. You can do it with lots of people get addicted because they do take Red Bull when they're in the middle of these depressions. Other people, in fact, find other ways of coping, and you've found a way of coping, I think, through your artistry. But I'm talking too much. Let's have questions here. Let's go over to this side, and then we'll come back to the middle and over here. Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you. I think you're a creative, artistic genius. And your film does more to fight stigma than any kind of media that we can be presented with. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just thank you. I just want to say I'm Sharon Dunas, and I've been the executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness for the last 8 years of my life. And my husband's family is from Latvia. And his one sister has schizophrenia, the other sister has bipolar disorder, and his father was the most paranoid person I ever knew. So if you, as the National Institute of Mental Health says, 1 in 4 of us has a mental illness. And if that's you and you want to hang around some really great people, have interesting experiences, please check out NAMILA.org, www.namila.org. Many of you are in the audience tonight that are members of NAMI. You won't be disappointed, and you'll be educated and feel right at home. Please join us. Thank you.
I can certainly endorse that.
Right.
Here we go in the middle, then we'll go to the other side. Wait for the machine.
First of all, thank you. It was wonderful. My question is, you have, it sounds like you have a sort of distancing feeling about medications, that there's a strong sense of a person fighting this on their own. Am I accurate? I
know that there is this, these two schools of taking medication or not taking medication, and I don't really. It's like I just made a personal choice. I'm not an advocate for any way, for or against. I do believe in medication that you should take it because medication helps to live and to survive. I don't personally take it because I was traumatized by what I saw in mental hospital and what happened to me in Soviet Union, which was 20 or more years ago, and it was a very primitive medicine. I know that now the medication is much better and more precise and with less side effects and all that, but I am kind of having a distance from that because of that my first experience that was not so good. But I do know that at some point, you know, like right now, I think that I discovered this like fragile balance. But I know that like any tragic event or some kind of event can throw me off the balance. And I would have to take medication, and I'm willing to take it. I just have to, I'm praying my Latvian gods that I know what moment to take it. And that be timely, you know, because medication takes time to work. So, but yeah, that you sensed it right, but it was just because of my personal experience and my personal fear of that.
Yes, the lady in green over here. And then we'll go to the back, and then we'll come to the front, and probably soon have to, unfortunately, close.
You describe a feeling of falling off the edge, which I have felt. And the last 20 minutes of the film were really magnificent in that way, because that feeling, it just makes you feel as though you're dropping off the edge. You really described it well. How do you control that or get past that rather than running on the conveyor belt?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier, that I feel that I have to get through it. Like I believe that a person cannot survive even a minute of deep depression unless they have a higher purpose. And since I am not religious, because I grew up in Soviet Union where religion was outcast and illegal, and so I don't have that kind of saving of religion. So I have to invent, or I have to come up with something that offers me that higher purpose. And, you know, in a film I say it's other people. But also, you know, I believe in making these small independent films. I believe that, I mean, it's very nice to have mass entertainment, but it's a one kind of thought. And I believe in a diversity of thought. I believe that each of us is unique, and our each voice should be expressed. And I believe that the world could be only seen from these different angles, and these different angles are very valid and valuable. And I feel that I want to express that, and that's kind of a higher purpose in a bigger sense. But in a smaller sense, it is this project, like I work on a film, and if I don't get up and do work, nobody else will do. And so that gets me through this deep depression that hits me twice a year. Let's say if I worked in a day job, like a teller at the bank from 9 till 5, if I don't show up at work, somebody else will come and do it. It's just that. But if I don't show up at work, if I don't do my work, nobody else will do. And since I attached the importance to that work, and I attached a higher purpose to what I do, it kind of helps me to get through. And I say, it's very, very hard, it's very, very difficult, and I'm suffering a lot, but I'm gonna get through it. And that is what gets me through. But I don't know if I answered your question.
Signe is also very involved with the independent animation scene in New York City, which is really getting out in the community and encouraging other filmmakers and sharing things with other filmmakers, and again, really getting outside of herself and her own little project, and so she does that a lot.
That's an important point, I think. One of what happens in these illnesses is it fragments the usual social relationships that we have, either because you're running too fast and people can't keep up with you, or that you can't get out of bed. And it's because we are social animals. I think one question I would have is, how does that help you? I mean, what Sturgis just said about the rich community in which you work, of animators in the traditional sense, as we saw in your film, rather than somebody who's playing with an abstract animations on a computer, for example. How does that help or hinder each of the mood states that you go through so regularly? And also, it's clear from watching the two of you that you are extraordinarily intertwined in the art that you do together. And so I'm curious about how that social element comes into the coping mechanisms that you're talking about.
Well, for me, other people, obviously, as you mentioned, you know, when I'm alone very soon, like if I'm alone for more than certain hours, and I love being alone, that's my favorite thing in the world, I love being alone. But I notice that I sink really deeply into something very internal and dark. And I get overwhelmed by the feelings. And when I get out and I see people, that's kind of an escape for me, you know, like when I have a conversation, then these obsessive thoughts, they don't come to me. Like I'm able to sustain a conversation and feeling happy when I talk to people. And of course, like it's like only a couple of hours a day, but still it gets me through. But the community, you know, the community that has a higher purpose, the community that has, whose higher purpose is aligned with my higher purpose, that is very important. And of course, Sturgis is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. If you didn't notice, we sleep together. If you had any wandering doubts or lingering questions and you were afraid to ask.
So a lover is a good thing.
Well, I mean, we were dating, we were lovers, and then 2 years, 1 year ago, we decided to be partners, and that took some fighting. All of a sudden, we were like fighters.
Meaning that this is the first time we've truly worked together on the same project. I'm in theater, which incidentally is a very social art. You cannot do it alone. You need the audience, you need other people. But it's also worked because we're both in the arts, but they're not competing arts. But she's helped me in my theater projects, and I've helped her in her animation projects. But this is the first time we truly worked together, and it's really only been in the last year that we did it on a full-time basis with the marketing and distribution of this film.
And this, you know, because to close out, this is brings us back to the first question, doesn't it? Because you ask, is this a genetic illness or is this a socially induced disorder? It isn't either. It's a complex disorder of mind, but it's also a disorder with a human face, because it's what happens to us that creates the opportunity for advance or engenders retreat. And these illnesses are all about advance and retreat. I mean, and so when we think about people who have these illnesses, or if we have them ourselves, then one of the most important things to do is to, although it's sometimes very painful if you have a partner who is depressed, because people get very cranky when they're depressed and they lose their motivation and they really can't get out of bed. I mean, they literally cannot get out of bed. And so, but that, being able to move through that with them is probably the life-saving element that changes the way in which the illness eventually unfolds, because then they become the pilot, or we become our own pilot in terms of managing the illness in a way that then makes it possible to be living with it rather than living under it, if you follow me. So I think we should stop there. It's 9:30. I'm delighted you all came and stayed, and we really must thank Signe and
Thank
Sturgis.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you.